welcome to today's press conference. My name is Ratheesh Radhakrishnan. I'm one of the selection panel members for the South Asia program, especially. And we have two filmmakers from the Focus South Asia section of the film festival. We have Anand Ekarshi from who made Aattam, and Rajesh Jala who made The Spark. Two very important, very interesting films in the program. So, considering it's just three of us, we can actually have a more intimate conversation than a more impersonal, big press conference like conversation today. Sure. So the main thing for us to get a sense of is, and this is clearly for future filmmakers and people who are kind of starting out. So what we need to get at is the kind of routes that a filmmaker takes to get where we are at this point of time, where we got here, how we got here, and how you plan to kind of go forward in a certain sense, so that some various blueprints of various journeys of filmmakers are actually on the table, so that future filmmakers and young people can actually get it. And a sense of your own film. These are things that we will kind of work with. So I would like to start with a general question for both of you, which is to say that I know that Rajesh, you started off as a documentary filmmaker.
The thing was like the winner gets to work with Imtiaz Ali. It was a national competition.
I see.
So went on to win it and worked with Imtiaz in Tamasha.
I see.
As an intern for 40 days. Then it's been, after that it's been 5 years. Had been did a couple of music videos. That was it. And then this first feature happened.
So how did the first feature actually happen? Because I think all the debut filmmakers I'm talking to, I'm asking this question. There's some kind of leap of faith you have to do where you actually say that, okay, I will now make my first feature,
right,
and kind of call myself a filmmaker, get into the profession in a particular way. There's a leap of faith here.
Right.
It can make or break, right, in a certain fashion. So what was your moment? How did you start off? What triggered
this particular
film?
Yeah, it all happened because all the actors, my movie is an ensemble cast, like 13 actors are there from the first scene to the last scene.
Right.
So all the actors, apart from the lead actress and another actor, all of them are part of a theatre group where I was working for 15 years. So all of them are friends. So it happened during the COVID times. We went for a short one-day trip, and there is this actor called Vinay Fort, who's pretty much a lead actor in Malayalam films. So he was also part of the theatre group back then before he went to Pune FTI and pursued film acting there. So he asked me, like, why don't we do something for all these theatre actors, like real good theatre actors, but who never got a chance to work in films, and who are like, most of them are like daily wages people. So he really thought that he should give them a space. Now that he was capable of initiating a film, he said that if you write something and if you're willing to direct, I'll be completely a part of the project and I'll back you in whatever possible ways I can. So that was his first thought. Right. So interestingly, normally movies come from an idea, but this movie was built for the cast.
Right.
The cast was set. So I had to build a story around the cast.
Right.
So 11 men were already there. So then from there, like we decided that because I'm a debutant and 9 actors are new to the films, we understood that it is not going to be easy to get a producer. So I thought might as well shoot a 10-minute scene and show it to whenever we are going to pitch to the producer, we'll show the pitch so that he understands that we know our stuff. So got money from one of my best friends. She gave me money, 1.5 lakhs. We shot the 10-minute scene in a house, like proper how a movie is done. So friends came in, shot free of cost, gave lights, camera, sings, live sound and all free of cost. So we shot this 10-minute scene. And then this producer happened. We had a common friend and knew that Ajit Joy, his name is Ajit Joy. He produced the movie called Mugundan Unni Associates and all. This was his 4th film. Went to him, showed the pitch. He saw the 10 minutes and he asked, when do you want to shoot? So it happened very smooth.
So as I was saying yesterday also, that the conversations here about the production process and so on is a happy conversation because you're here, right? Yeah. The film is actually made, it's at a festival, so that part of it is a story of something working. Right. But we'll get to other aspects later. But one of the things I've noticed this time when talking to younger filmmakers is that this idea of this kind of collective, almost as someone called an artisanal mode of actually people coming together and that creating something, like Fasil yesterday was Fasil Rasakov. The sentence was actually talking about how he got an idea from three people who were his friends, and then collected everybody around them, and they had different talents. So he actually included all their talents into the film. I mean, this seems to be an interesting practice. Here, you are also saying something similar. You already had a set of people with a set of talents. You included them and wrote a script around them. So this is seems to be something of a developing mode in Indian filmmaking. That is quite interesting. But this theatre history. So I realize that you also have a theatre
Yes,
kind of background.
as an actor.
So again, Rajat Kapoor's film, for example, films usually use this kind of theatre mode where his same group, like even the film that premiered here, Everybody Loves Rabhanda, again, a set of his theatre company and as all kind of works through this mode of acting. So what is that connect with theatre that you want to actually think about when you actually thought about the film? A set of theatre actors, they're all from theatre, you're from theatre.
Yeah.
And so how did theatre become part of this kind of process that you're actually thinking about?
Like you said, they're all theatre actors. I'm from theatre. The story is based, they're playing themselves.
Right.
The characters are playing themselves. We have not even changed their names. So they're also, in the movie also, they're theatre actors. But the story is not an adaptation of a play or something. It is a slow burn suspense drama, which is happening in the lives of these theatre actors. So like in terms of how theatre help means like we did 35 days of scene rehearsals before the shoot.
Correct. So this is the interesting part about the theatrical.
Yeah. So because I clearly knew that 9 of them are new to film. So theatre acting has very less to do with film acting. So they had to make that shift. So we did 35 days of scene rehearsals with camera, like some sort of camera, small DSLR. So that they get used to a camera being there and they get used to the start-stop acting, like shot-to-shot acting. So, but because they're theatre actors, they could even pull off a 10 to 12 minute long ensemble dialogue intensive scene just like that. So they had no problems with learning their lines and stuff, and plus coming to the rehearsals on time, being there, discipline the part. So, and we did 7 days of rehearsals on set as well. So those rehearsals and theatre, that is coming from theatre.
Right.
That that readiness to come for rehearsals and do it back to back. So that really helped in terms of, because this is a performance-oriented movie, that really enormously helped the performances. Yes.
And finally, you zeroed in on a story which is fictional, clearly, where you decided that with this actress I can do this kind of fictional story, right? And you picked on a story about kind of sexual harassment kind of situation, which creates all kinds of tensions around that, and question of truth, and how do you understand truth, and how do you kind of trust somebody and not trust somebody. These are all issues that came up. How do you zero in on that issue? Because it's also a topical issue, right? It's been discussed in the last 4 or 5 years, especially with Me Too and so on and so forth. It's been around, right? So how did you zero in on that particular kind of idea as the? And you also said that the protagonist, the woman protagonist, she's not part of the company.
Right.
So clearly she was brought into this team because the story took on this shape in a particular way. So how did you get there?
Yeah. So like I said initially, the story was built around the cast.
Yeah.
Like I had 11 men, so I had to use them. So then I thought, then this the actual idea was not of a sexual harassment or anything of that sort. The first idea is the pursuit of justice. The pursuit is the pursuit that of a group, or is it actually an individual who pursues justice or truth? Can a group ever arrive at justice or sense of truth, especially when your personal desires are at stake? So this was one question that was working on, and then I thought. So I understood that the film is going to be in a scenario where it is a group versus individual, or a society versus individual. So then I had 11 men. So they are a group. So obviously the individual had to be a woman, or if it is a woman, it's all the more interesting. Then came the idea. Like, what should be the central conflict? Then I knew that it is such a, like how you said, it's so relevant and is happening in terms of lots of discussions and debates are going on, sexual harassment and everything on that. So I thought, how can we say it in a way where we can go quite deeper into it, without being preachy or without giving answers, without having a holier than thou attitude where, come on, listen, guys, this is how it is. Can we go deeper into human behavior and psychology and, the grays of people than to the black and whites.
And kudos to you, because all the things that you're saying you pulled off. I mean, quite well in the film, and all these aspects of theatricality, of performance, of the question of justice, of the role of the woman in vis-a-vis a set of men. I mean, all this have been pulled off very well, and so really, I mean, congratulations, Rajesh. To you, I mean, you're like I said, you have a career as a documentary filmmaker. You've been working with Varanasi as a space for a long time. So, at what point of time did you come to a point where you thought introducing a fictional element into because the film itself is strong on the documentary impulse. It's not like a full fiction. It's really working with the spaces, time, place of Varanasi. But you introduce a fictional element, a story, a character into the story, like a arc which ends at some point. At what point of time, as a documentary filmmaker, did you think that, okay, let me introduce fiction into this into your thinking? What was that trajectory for you?
I always wanted to be a filmmaker since my childhood. And I always believed that I'm a filmmaker rather than a documentary or a fiction filmmaker. But when I started in mid-90s, and there were very little resources because that was not the digital era. It was more or less analog video era. So then we wouldn't get opportunities. We couldn't imagine making a fiction film because we didn't have the resources. So how does one start? One starts with, like Anand was saying, corporate. I also started with making small little corporate films and all that. Then gradually I shifted to where I wanted to walk, and that was documentary films or fiction. Fiction I couldn't have made because that was very expensive kind of a proposition. So I started making small little documentaries and all that. So it started there. So me as a filmmaker, I don't think from fiction or non-fiction lens that I have to make a fiction or non-fiction film. Since I didn't have the resources to make a fiction film, I couldn't make it. Now that, many years back, I've been, thinking for such a long time that I wanted to make a fiction film. In fact, the earlier short film I made, 23 Winters, about a friend who, I don't know whether you've seen that. Okay, so it's about a schizophrenic friend who's also a refugee from Kashmir. And I made a fictional come documentary short film on him. It was like 10 years back. So I wanted to make fiction, but I never got a chance to make fiction. In this film, thankfully, it's been a long journey for this film, also The Spark, that we started working on in 2013. It was at Film Bazaar Lab. Then it got the best project at co-production. But I couldn't make...
This is Film Bazaar.
The Film Bazaar. But I couldn't make the film. I had to rework on the script again. I changed the backstory of the film. That version, that draft had a different backstory. So eventually, in 2016-17, the backstory of this film became different. So that's how it continued, and I made this fiction film. But yes, when you say that there is a documentary sort of influence in the film, I think I as a filmmaker, as a documentary, because I worked in documentary for a long time, it has really helped me to understand cinema so well, because I believe that documentary is capturing reality and fiction is more or less recreating that reality. So I think when a person, I'm talking on my behalf, when a person comes from a documentary background, it really helps you to understand the different dimensions of reality and then how to create that reality. That is what we attempted to do.
Now, what is again interesting is that though your films are so different from each other when you actually see it, but what I increasingly see, and like I said, there's a general tendency in filmmaking that I see large, though final output is very different, a tendency is to actually gather together the world around you, either transform it entirely fictionally, sometimes that happens, by using elements that doesn't look from the real world anymore, it looks fictional only, or like you, where actually the documentary element stays very strong. For example, I think of Paban Kumar's Lady of the Lake, another film which actually marries the fictional and the documentary impulse, like your film does in that mode. So this is very interesting that you actually see this kind of commonality, which again, I think somebody has to really look and study as a particular modality of filmmaking at this particular point of time. And both of you, and your entry points are very different, and I want to hear from both of you about this. You start with a group of people and then finally come up to a issue which is, like I said, topical, political, if you want to call it that way, of gender dynamics, patriarchy, sexual harassment, and so on. Whereas your film also deals directly with the political in a certain manner. And this comes from your earlier work too. Children of Fire, again, is a very political film. So at this point of time, like, what do you think a filmmaker's relationship with politics is? Like, how do you actually deal with this, the political in a certain sense? And like I said, I'm not saying that your films are directly political or your films are statements or anything of that kind. But all of us, most filmmakers seems to arrive at some kind of a political question, which you cannot ignore. It's around you. So somehow. So what is your relationship with that? Because you start off at a different place. You don't start off at the problem. You start off with the thing, but you arrive here, and then you want to figure out a way to actually make it not only about it also, right? You want to present it in a fashion that it do not lose its earlier impulse. So when the political question comes up, how do you actually, as a filmmaker, negotiate it? Like, for example, how did you work with the actor, the female protagonist, for example? Because she's the one through which the political question is coming out. How do you deal with that problem at this point? Is it inevitable that filmmakers have to somehow encounter politics as you actually work with at this point?
That is very true. Like, it is inevitable that filmmaker, be it any artist, when you're out there and doing your art, you're encountering politics, because that is there around you. But I've always felt that politics, not the politics, but the politics of anything per se is so complex, so deep, so networked, that you cannot just pinpoint and say, this is it, this is it, this is it. So with my work, even if it's a short story that I'm writing, or if it is a film that I'm doing, even if it's a screenplay or a feature film, or even if it is a discussion with my friend, I'd rather like to explore through my art, ask questions and put up discussions than give answers, because I don't know the answers. Personally, I don't know the answers. So I always believe that as an artist, it gives more power to you if you are observant of all politics, of all sorts of things. And for me, it is very important that I am not part of any politics. It is very important for me that I don't have an idea, I don't have any judgment, or even if I have it, I'd rather keep it to myself and explore it on my own and not discuss by dialogue. Rather, I keep it all in and use it in my art. Because, I've always believed that it is very important. Like, it is out there that people are talking about having stands and having positions. This is my position, that I felt that I should always have, that is to not to have a position.
No, absolutely. I mean, very interesting way to put it. I was actually thinking that at this point of time, very polarized and very difficult world that we're living in, it looks like any artist who actually looks at the world closely will have to encounter some kind of a polarization or a conflict or something like that. I mean, it's very difficult to keep away from it. Then the question, like you're saying, is how do I present it? Like, how do I respond to it? Do I respond to it in this fashion, that fashion, directly, indirectly, by not kind of judging it, like you're saying? These are all choices that you make. But that encounter seems to be inevitable. That's the way.
The encounter seems to be inevitable, but it also comes. Your answer comes from which point are you looking at all these things? Are you in the midst of it?
Yeah.
Are you looking at? It's all about perceptions. It's all about how you're looking at it. If you are looking at your own life and things around from a very existentialist perspective, where something called death is right there in front of you from any moment to anywhere, so then I'm just saying, your perceptions of politics and your perceptions of whatever is happening in the world might change.
Right.
It is not necessary that it is some, like, you're taking sides and it is an active political debate.
Correct.
Internally also.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's what I meant. So your approach then is what makes a difference. Yeah. Rajesh, I was actually thinking that for you as a documentary filmmaker, this impulse becomes much more stronger, right? Because gathering from the world is your trade in some fashion, right? I mean, you're not kind of fictional, like kind of creating it entirely from imagination, but you have to work with almost like the clay of the real world, right? So then. And your film is also much more directly addressing contemporary world and politics in a certain sense. It's like almost like you're asking the audience not to lose attention on some of these things. I mean, stay, look at here, listen to this, like that kind of thing. It's you, like, pay attention. I mean, that's the kind of thing you're doing. So what is your relationship to the question of politics in cinema? And as an artist, how do you address this? I mean, because everybody will have an answer which will be different.
I think there are two aspects with regard to the politics in my cinema or otherwise. A, as a filmmaker, I think politics is everywhere, like Anand is saying. We can't escape that. But separately, me as a filmmaker, whatever bothers me the most, which has the political influence, and that becomes more important for me as an artist to perhaps to explore and work on. This is one part of the answer. The second part is me as an individual. I was uprooted in 1990. I am a Kashmiri Hindu. So I am a victim of politics. So it hit me more, actually. You know, victims know the pain better. Victims know the politics of being victimized better, rather than the people who talk about the politics. So I belong to that category. I'm not an observant, so to say. I am a part of that victim politics. So in that sense, I believe that I can understand the repercussions of politics. You know, to my best of my capabilities, I can understand it quite a bit. So in that sense, the effects of politics has influenced my character. Yes. Although I'm apolitical in many ways, I don't belong to any ideology, by the way. I don't support any ideology, at least in India. But I do observe and I do see what is going in politics. So the spark is also, like you said, it is obviously the polarization and all that. It comes from a person who was hit by politics and who could relate to the minorities of, you know, the victims of politics. That is why this film came.
Very interesting. I think more has to be more people have to think about how to engage with this question, because it's, like I said, it's our attention to the world that makes us political or not political or have an opinion about the world or whatever. So, and cinema is the art of attention in that manner. What I want to next move on to, I'll ask Rajesh first, is clearly Varanasi, Banaras is very important for you as a place. Like it's what animates your thinking in all kinds of ways. What is your relationship with, how do you think of your relationship with Varanasi? Do you see yourself making a film outside Varanasi at all at some point of time? Or is it something more stronger, you have more things to explore and you stay with it? What is your relationship with that place?
I think I was actually introspecting about it. I've been making films on Varanasi quite a while. I think the other day I was thinking about it. I thought I'm not evolving as a filmmaker because I need to explore more spaces. With all due respect, Varanasi has so much to offer. But yes, I think most likely the Varanasi chapter for now is...
Yeah, you're taking a break.
I'm taking a break. But there are films, I want to make a film on Kashmir and I'm working towards that, writing the script and all. But Varanasi, I don't know, I lived my life in Kashmir until 20 years of my life, and then I became a refugee, I came to Delhi. Then when I was exposed to the books and pictorials of Varanasi, it was fascinating to see the culture of Varanasi through images. And that was the first point when I sort of decided that I have to go there and see and experience Varanasi. And then I went there with many ideas and I explored. I spent a lot of time in Varanasi and I made 4 films in Varanasi. So Varanasi has a special place. I have learned so much there. My films which I made in Varanasi has taught me so much. I am indebted to Varanasi.
And so very different because your film is not a film of a place in that sense. It's a chamber drama, more or less, right? But again, unlike Rajesh, I cannot ask you a question about a long-term relationship because it's your first film, right? But again, I'm interested in this theatre question. I mean, like when you actually work with theatre and the form of theatre enters the film in a certain manner, it becomes that. Do you see any long-term commitment to this form, or do you see that this is a one-off engagement, or do you see the form of the theatre something that you after doing it? Maybe you said it's an accident, it was an accident, it was an idea that came and that's how you worked with it. But after doing it, what's your relationship with this form?
I see myself using a lot of theater actors in my coming films because it is a treat to work. It's an amazing experience to work with them just because of the commitment they have, because they're not looking for anything else but the very joy of acting. So when they come on set with no air and nothing and such talent, so I see, yeah, that part I'm really looking forward to. Where obviously I may not be making movies about theater actors or in anything, and I never know. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
I can never know.
It's
Also.
unfair to ask you.
Yeah, I can never know. Also, but I'm very sure that I'll be using theater actors not just from the group that I was coming from, but across Kerala there are a lot of theater groups and a lot of theater actors. So yes.
At this point, as an interjection, what was the theatre group's name?
Logadharmi.
It was
Logadharmi.
I thought it was Logadharmi, but I wanted to hear from you. Yeah.
I just wanted to add to this theater thing because the Spark, protagonist of the Spark, Puneet Saraswat, is a theater actor. Now, when I met him, because we didn't have the resources, obviously, where does one go to theater? We can't afford the mainstream actors and all. But it is not actually affordability, it is the commitment, like Anand was saying. When we shortlisted, when we decided to go with Puneet and we locked him, then he started working with us in 2019. For next 3.5 years, he stayed with us because I have asked him to, enter into that skin of the character, not to act, etc., etc. And he did it so well in terms of, because he had theater background. What I wanted to say is that the theater, the commitment to cinema, the commitment to art, I think the theater artists have the best in. And that is what I actually experienced when I was working with Puneet. So that's what reminded me about what Anand is saying about theater.
So there's again very interesting kind of trajectories. Again, very different films, very different routes. But again, one finds all kinds of commonalities when you actually start working. We have a few people in the audience. If there are any questions, quickly before I ask my own questions about these films or their practice or how films are made generally, this would be the time. Anything? Yeah, please. Can someone give a mic?
Hi. So I have been to Banaras. I'm from Banaras, and it's a very crammed city. And whenever I watch a film from Banaras, I always want to ask the filmmaker, how do you shoot there? Because it's so crowded. I take out my camera and I walk the streets, and it's always like, the moment passes and there's a bus here or there's a procession going by, and it's always it's chaotic, it's beautiful, but I can't find the moment to shoot something there. So like I would like to know the experience.
Yeah. Before you answer, let me generalize it so that Anand can also come into the conversation. I mean, it's basically, I think, about shooting spaces at the end of the day, right? I mean, here you have a thing of shooting at a city which is very difficult to shoot. And anybody, I mean, you don't have to be in Varanasi to actually, you just watch Varanasi or many other Indian cities actually, but Varanasi extremely, that you know that it's very difficult to shoot there. And you shot almost like inside rooms, like entirely with a group of people. So I would like both of you to talk about like kind of how do you like deal with spaces, right? Two very different kind of spaces, but still. Rajesh.
Space is very important for my films. When I write the screenplay, at least in this case, and earlier when I made that short film which was a fiction come documentary, screenplay is really an important part, and one of the most important part of the screenplay is spaces for me, because I have a strong visual and sound inclination, and that comes from space. Space, you cannot imagine imagery and sound without spaces. At least I can't do that. So space comes first to me. Sometimes perhaps before the story also. So Varanasi, where I have worked a lot, and you asked the question, so how do you manage?
So practical question was, how do you put a camera there?
I think what I have learned is it's about how much time you spend there. See, if you go out with a camera and expect that you want to shoot a particular thing in an hour or in a day, it might not happen. you'll have to spend a lot of time there to understand how to do it, where to do it, when to do it, what are the resources you need to do it, how do you coordinate with the resources and all that. It's a very logistical question actually, more than an artistic question. So because I have a strong documentary background, that has helped me to understand how does one shoot films without tamjham and all that.
So there, I think, let me add something to what you said, just give a gloss on what you said. There's a logistical part to it and so on. But I think one of the things that Rajesh is also saying is about spending time in a place also to kind of get to the rhythm of that place to find the right moment to actually shoot it, right? So rather than just shoot it, you need to actually like kind of get into the rhythm so that you know exactly the right moment to actually capture something. So I think something about the rhythm of the space, I think, was a good word to think about what you said. Yeah,
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Anand, close spaces, like entirely to think of a, like entirely meaning there are, of course, there are some scenes outside, but most of it happens almost around a table.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like how did you work that? I mean, there's a whole tradition of this. I mean, it's not like a new thing, but I mean, not that doesn't make it easy, right?
That
So
doesn't make
how did you actually manage to work with that?
Yeah, like you said, 70% of the movie, more than 75% of the movie is inside a house. So it
With lot of people.
lot
Right?
of people. Like there are 11 people. The script progressed to a point where they have to discuss. They have to discuss this thing, and it is such a serious topic that you cannot discuss in leisure, and you cannot deviate from the topic because it's a serious issue. The topic comes back.
So
So
almost like they have an agenda to discuss.
they have
Like
an
11
agenda to
11,
discuss.
right?
And so there, I knew that this was going to be a chamber drama from now. I didn't plan it to be a chamber drama. It eventually progressed to be a chamber drama. So I understood it's going to be inside the house. And like you said, it is very difficult because even my cinematographer was getting worried because he was not able to find new angles. Mani, you cover this, you cover that, you cover that, and beyond a point, it is. And also, we had decided that we are not going to shoot it. We are not going to use any cinematic, the so-called cinematic shots like a track or trolley. Even till the last second half, we decided that we are not going to use any lenses beyond 50. So it is going to be deep focus. So we limited ourselves also on top of a limited space. So I decided that it should not be boring also. So it has to be engaging. So we cannot change this place, but we can make the actors move from once. We can change the climate around the surrounding. We can, even though we cannot change the surrounding itself. So we decided we wanted a house where if they can exit to the backyard of the house, there could be a river flowing close by. So then that could change the look. And even though they are in the house, but they're if they come out and it's an exterior and it is a space that you are not anticipating to come. And so then we used like how the internal things of the characters change, like how when the internal climate changes, we thought might as well use it outside as well. So there's a point when the storm comes, when then the rain comes. So like why? So it is in a way it is all. I felt if done well, it works for you also in a way that like the audience will feel that they are in that house. They know the space, and it's when the story is about happens on a single day, you get exhausted with the characters. So I felt that it works for you as well, more than it being a limitation.
Now, what comes out again is very interesting in what you're saying. I mean, Rajesh's answer is actually about time, to find the right time to actually shoot something, and yours is about how to expand space. So there's very interesting two angles of filmmaking coming out very clearly. How do you actually open up a small space to kind of expand it with other elements and so on and so forth, so it doesn't look like it's constricted in that particular fashion. So again, very, very technical and aesthetic issues involved here in terms of actually thinking about time and space of cinema. Any other, one here and then?
Yeah. Hi, this is Praveen from Tamil Nadu. So I just want to ask you something. So you were telling that you don't want to showcase your political stand. So being an artist and a filmmaker, writer, whatever you are, so either you should be in right or left. You can't stand at center, right? So which element emotes you to write or shoot a film? Because you don't want to showcase your political stand anywhere. So which drives you to make films or write?
Just before Anand says, I don't think what he meant was he's apolitical. The question is, how do you actually approach and present the politics, right? Please.
How, can you just
I
explain the
know
question?
what you're saying is, how do you approach and present a thought, an idea, rather than it being an apolitical thing, right? Yeah. How do you actually?
Yeah, because I've always felt that both in terms of the art that I want to say make, and as a person also, I would like to be very accepting of all kinds of people, all kinds of ideas, all kinds of ideologies, and discuss and have dialogue. Not to, for me, agreeing and disagreeing, for me, it takes a long time because I don't know. I need a lot of dialogue, even if it is an ideology, even if it is a person, even if it is a wrong person for someone outside, it doesn't matter to me, or even if it is a wrong ideology for someone, for me to either accept or disagree with it, it takes a long time. So that dialogue is very important. So I would like to present my art as a dialogue than as in terms of politics, than giving answers or taking any stand or in taking any side per se. Because I found it very difficult to understand what right and left is. I've tried a lot, but I've not understood. Yeah.
So, but would it be right to then say that what, in your estimation, art should do, or your own art should do? I mean, you might not want to say art should do in a general sense. Your own art should do is to actually present a conflict or an argument, so that the politics is not in what you say, but in how a spectator or a viewer
Exactly.
kind of goes away
Perceives
with,
it,
right?
perceives it.
So that could be one way to think about it, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's yeah. And would you want to say something about this?
I think let's not get stuck in right and left. As a filmmaker, if I see a conflict, if I see somebody suffering, I want to capture why is the person or the community suffering. I want to capture it with all honesty, without getting biased, and then present what does that person or community feel about that conflict, rather than A right or B left talking about that issue. I would like to directly let the person, the victim, speak about the issue rather than looking through the lens of right or left. So I don't want to spend my time in thinking whether I should believe in right or left or not. I want to be a part of that real experience where I am interacting or observing that victim.
So again, just to again think about what you're both saying is actually, I mean, it's not as though that as individuals you don't have your politics. I mean, everybody will have your position in a certain manner. But when you're actually encountering the world that you actually want to capture in a particular way, the word that you use, the truth of that world, is what you are committed to in terms of presenting it, so that the all the elements of that truth are out there, which allows for the spectator to connect with Anand's thing, to actually then access it. And then at the end of the day, all spectators are thinking people, they have to figure out their own ways of actually engaging with that and finding out their own truths in that kind of a thing. That's true. I think both of you are connecting to that. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a question for Anand. I saw your film and it's beautifully balanced. How did you arrive at that script? Because it's quite difficult to take side. I mean, it's easy to take sides in that kind of a case scenario. So how did you basically balance that out? Because you had 11 men
Yeah.
and one woman.
Yeah, there were 11 men, and if you're asking about how the perspectives were balanced out, because I thought it was not very difficult in terms of all the perspectives that each 11 men present. It is out there. It is like it is out there in the society, and much more than in the society, it is very much inside me. So all of the men are me myself in a way. Even the protagonist, even the actress, is also me myself in a way, where I was more looking into human behavior and like the psychology of things, rather than the external politics of things. Because I've always seen when I work, when I'm interacting with people, they go back and forth in terms of being good and going into the gray and being bad and stuff. So if you ask me how did I work it out, of course, like I wrote down a arc for each characters and made sure that the continuity is not jarring, and it is just throughout and it's clear, and yeah.
So it is basically about gender politics, isn't it? I mean, it is gender politics, basically,
The movie,
the movie.
one layer of it, one layer of it. But I thought for me it is much deeper than that also. Yeah.
If I can say a word about your this thing connected to the idea of truth that Rajesh was talking about, I think what you managed to do to respond to that is that I think the confusion in the film is only about who. I think what he was true to was the experience of the girl. I don't think that is challenged at any point. And that's, I think, the truth of that point, that this experience is not challenged. The film doesn't challenge that. Film accepts the facts that something happened and her experience is true. Now, how do you figure out who and how do you meet justice is that's a complicated problem. And I think that's where the truth of the matter, for me, while watching the film came up. Because the film did not say that this did not happen. That was not on the table at all for discussion. That was accepted that this happened. So that, I think, was the truth that you were actually seeking. One more question, and then I have one question we should close after that. Yeah.
Hi. So, Anand, I haven't had the pleasure of watching your film, but it's a craft question. It's a chamber piece with an ensemble cast, and I always wondered in these films, like, how do you shoot coverage? You know, like when you shoot, like, because I can't imagine, like, unless it's a multi-camera setup, like capturing her actor ka reaction. Like, how do you do that? Like, do you have every actor do the scene multiple times and you keep changing the camera, or do you put stand-ins and like just how? Because I've seen 12 Angry Men, and I understood how they did that, but it's still I don't get the craft of it, like the logistics and all.
Yeah, that is exactly why, like, say a 2 hour movie inside a house also takes 25 days to shoot. Like, we go for the wider coverages. If you're asking technically, like, there were days when we were using multicams, because when it's an ensemble, to recreate certain choreography parts, where the movements and reactions to different shots, it becomes very difficult. Becomes very difficult, and to keep the truth and making them do it over and over again, and still to hold the truth becomes difficult. So multicam really helps.
And especially when theatre actors who are used to improvisation,
Yeah.
to make it the same thing twice will be very difficult.
Very difficult. That was the toughest challenge, because theater actors are not very aware of continuity. They do one thing, they improvise a lot. So if I ask them to do the same thing again, then it becomes very mechanical. So it was the most important thing was to capture, than having a very beautiful shot or something of that sort. But like I said, the rehearsals really help you. Everything is choreographed. Every movement, it is so choreographed. It is so rehearsed that it doesn't look choreographed. So yeah, and once the choreography is set, so it's not a random thing. Then you know what to cover. This should be the wide. This should go to the mid, and this to the close. It is just we pursued basic filmmaking, just basic filmmaking.
Okay, so I'll end with this one question, which, like I said, till now it's all happy things and we worked it out and all that. Then comes the difficult part. You made the film. Now, what do you do with the film? I mean, this is the difficult part, right? Like the circulation of the film. I mean, its career. I mean, money, whatever. I mean, there's a whole element of the career of the film once it is made, right? Now, in Rajesh's case, in the earlier films and so on and so forth, clearly there is a system of documentary screening in India, like NGOs, groups, whatever. We know that in a certain sense. So documentary filmmakers, though they don't really make money or whatever, in terms of showing films, there is an infrastructure which is under threat and all that, but it's still there, right, in a certain sense. But now you're actually moving slightly away from that, right? And you are making your first film. So what were your thoughts? I'll ask you first, and then what were your thoughts when you're making the film about what you will do with this film in terms of its distribution? Did you have a strategy of how to take this film out? What were your distribution and exhibition and whatever strategies that you thought about? The actual practical part of that. Did you have thoughts about it?
I did think about it, not in terms of like what strategy will I have for distribution, because this is my debut film and I don't know much about the distribution part, like how to take it forward. But I knew that this movie should run in normal theaters. It should do well in theaters. Common people should come and do, apart from the festivals. I was very sure that it shouldn't end with running in festivals and things like that. So that is why it was very important for me. The producer getting his money back is absolutely important. I'll not be able to sleep if that doesn't happen. So I knew because that was there from the initial thing. You also package your script and you also package your edit. You even your film in terms of filmmaking also you make sure that it caters to the theater audience as well, the not so called movie buffs as well. So yeah, that part was there. Now, in case with regard to our movie, the producer himself is distributing it in Kerala. He has a distribution wing as well. So it is releasing in Jan. Yeah, it is pretty much sorted in terms of distribution and all. It is pretty much sorted.
That's great too. Great. And clearly, you have a bit of a festival run before that. A few more festivals
Yes,
coming
yeah,
up. And so on.
IFFK and IFFI. Yeah.
Coming up and all that. And Rajesh, what were your thoughts about when you made the film? That I mean, of course, your documentary infrastructure would be of support. I can imagine that. Hopefully, but did you have, because now it's a slightly different kind of film? Did you think more about this or different strategies and so on?
I didn't think much about the distribution part of the film because nobody came on board as a producer to support this film for whatever obvious reasons. Maybe because of the subject or because otherwise. Because these kinds of films are very difficult to make right now. So, but because I wanted to make this film, so we were consumed. One of my actually Prayas, who was the executive producer of the film. So when we exhausted our resources and we didn't have money to shoot the last 2 schedules, then he said, okay, now I'll be the co-producer of the film. So he became the co-producer of the film. So it's a journey which is evolving. I am not sure about what is going to happen because I have another challenge. I don't know the censor and all that. That is another challenge we have to face. Let's hope that is cleared, but it's not easy. And then also this kind of film, the OTTs are also not very going to be receptive because of the subject of this film. So I don't know. I will be working towards, making sure that we reach somewhere, but I don't know how is it going to shape up. Very difficult.
I mean, again, this is the difficult part of it. I mean, at least you've started your journeys. You had a good run in Ifla. Now you're at Mami. You had a good run in Busan. Now you're here. So clearly, I mean, something is moving, and I really hope that the film gets a good run. And congratulations once again. It's a pleasure talking to you, and it's a pleasure watching your films. Yeah,
Thank you so
thanks
much.
a lot.
Thank you so much.